back on a Monday recording yet another edition of the CBB Central podcast. And Brad, we usually record on Sunday nights. I was busy. You were busy. I was doing an interview with Charlie Hall, Northwestern men's basketball's favorite walk-on. I was interviewing him on the Sports Voice, a show that we do on campus every week. Got some good information from Charlie about the 2017 team, about some fun stuff off the court as well, about him playing against the Balls in AAU basketball. But I'm glad we held off on the podcast because we got some pretty big news this morning.
Yeah, that was when you had to read it a couple times to see that it wasn't like a fake account that like switched the name of the picture to Woj. So I read it about 4 times. Yeah, I mean, Beilein leaving Michigan, huge deal, and hopefully we get some serious coaching carousel movement. You know, it would stink if like Billy Donovan jumps in and takes it, or if Yaklich or Sadie Washington, is it Sadie or Sadiq Washington?
I don't know.
If they get promoted, because then the carousel doesn't move. But like, if we get someone like Mike Bray, then Notre Dame, you know, or like Shaka Smart was mentioned too. So like Notre Dame or Texas would then take another high major coach, so then we can really get some serious action on the coaching carousel.
I mean, Notre Dame would hire Porter Moser, right?
Sure. I mean, Catholic school, right?
Yeah, it sounds right. I mean, it was one of those things. I woke up at 8:45 this morning, and I had class at 10, so I tried to wake up at 9. Woke up naturally at 8:45, and I checked my phone, and I've got like a bazillion texts from people like, "Oh, who's Michigan hiring?" or Beilein to the Cavs. Oh my God! And I'm like, "Oh God, what did I do?" So I spent like next half an hour just sitting on my phone, like catching up on messages, like texting people that I know and trust, and trying to figure out what the heck is happening. And it's simultaneously stunning and not surprising at all, right? Like, it just came out of nowhere, so it felt like a stunner. But I think on its face, like, I am not surprised that John Beilein wanted to jump to an NBA job now. I don't think that's crazy. I think working for the Cavs is a little interesting just because I think it's a weird, like, it's a bad organization in general. But, I mean, it's the opportunity for him to do it. And, I mean, I certainly don't question him wanting it, especially given the landscape of college basketball at this point for a guy like John Beilein.
Well, I mean, he turned down the Pistons last year, right? So it's not the first time that he's kind of flirted with jumping to the NBA. He loses 3 players to early entry. Only one he probably knew for certain in Charles Matthews. Preseason was going to leave. Poole and Brazdeikis, I'm sure he wasn't 100% certain that they were leaving because their roster kind of has a hole on the wing now. So they were people still had them very highly ranked. I haven't redone my rankings since the first post-NCAA tournament one, but I'm sure that I would have them in the top 25 with their current roster. But even still, they would be taking a step back. So it makes sense from that perspective to leave. And kind of like the whole Keith Dambrot to Duquesne, it's like a lot of people see the job as like a wasteland, like a NBA team with no talent is a unenviable task. Right? Like you look at Igor Kokoshkov for the Suns, he's like this highly respected assistant. He finally gets his chance on a rebuilding Suns team, and they only give him 1 year before firing him. So I mean, hopefully Cleveland won't do that since they gave him a full 5-year deal. But certainly a risk. But with what he's accomplished at this stage of his career, it's one worth taking.
Right. I mean, he's 66 years old. I think he realizes he can coach for 5 to 10 more years. Ideally, he does it all with the Cavs. He gets a good lottery selection tomorrow night at the lottery, lands, say, Zion or John Morant or RJ Barrett. And then he has a core with those guys, with Larry Nance Jr., with some of the other guys, and tries to build towards the postseason. And if he wins, I mean, he's not going to win a championship in the NBA. That's unrealistic. Unless Zion Williamson turns into LeBron, he's now winning a championship. But, I mean, if he brought a team to the playoffs, I think that'd be huge. And I do think it's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's referendum is the right word, but you see a lot of takes about how John Beilein leaving college basketball says something about college basketball. And I'm kind of interested in your thoughts on that, because I think for John Beilein, the idea that he has to replace his roster every year and be on the recruiting trail every single day, like trying to get transfers, trying to get guys who might stay only 1 year, is not what he wants to do. I think that to me is more so his frustration is the constant nature of roster flipping is more his frustration that he has to be in charge of all of that than it is, oh, everyone's cheating and I'm not, which I think I've seen a lot of takes about. But I'm kind of interested in your thoughts there because it is not a good sign for college basketball to lose one of its top 5 coaches, and probably it's the face of. I mean, if you're looking for a face of college basketball right now, John Beilein's a pretty good face for it. It's not good that college basketball is losing that guy to a largely undesirable NBA job.
I don't think it matters too much. I mean, college basketball is all about the brand name, and the coach is the most closely associated with the brand and helps build the brand the most. But I mean, Michigan's a strong brand. I mean, they had the Fab Five. I mean, they're a national brand, a national power. They're going to get a good coach in here, and I mean, coaches leave all the time. It doesn't really hurt college basketball. Like Billy Donovan left. Brad Stevens left, Calipari left, Pitino left. I mean, it's the whole nature of college basketball is, and people use this as like a point of like why the NBA is better, as in like star power. Like in college basketball, the players are staying, 1 year, 4 years at the most, right? But most stars aren't staying all 4 years. So I mean, the players and the faces are changing year in and year out, and the one constant is the brand. And I think Michigan's brand is certainly strong enough to survive losing Beilein.
Yeah, I mean, I'll buy that. I just think there is something to be said for the fact that I think the coaches do matter in college basketball, and I don't think it's a good sign that a coach like Beilein, who has been college basketball and had other opportunities to leave, is now deciding now is a good time to move on to the NBA. But I think you're right in that the brand is the most important thing in college basketball. Let's talk about the replacements and your thoughts there. So I made a preliminary list that I posted on Twitter today. I don't really have any major adjustments in the last several hours in terms of my thoughts on who it would be. So I said, shoot for the stars, Billy Donovan. I mean, fits the brand of Michigan, right time to come back to school. The timing of the coaching change makes sense to go back to college. He has national championship experience. He's coached the NBA. He's a big name. I mean, I think it fits all around. My realistic list, I had Mike Rhodes, Ed Cooley, Mike Bray, Wojciechowski at Marquette, Laval Jordan, and Juwan Howard. I think Mike Rhodes is a name that would be, I have been told to watch here. That things could happen there. So Mike Rhodes at VCU, a name to watch. I've also been told Porter Moser. I saw that from coaching changes as well. So Porter Moser may angle for this one. But that middle tier guys who've won NCAA tournament games or been at that level, but don't have that sustained success. Nate Oates would have been on that list as well, but he basically announced he's not interested and he wants Sadie Washington to get the job. And then, of course, as I said, the internal candidates, Sadie Washington and Luke Yaklich. I think the interesting thing there is the splitting votes conundrum, where I think both are head coach worthy, both have a chance to do a fantastic job, but it is very difficult it's very difficult to hire it from within unless there's a clear choice. I don't know that there is one, and so I think from that perspective, Michigan is unlikely to do the internal hire. I think Yaklich probably hops on with Beilein, coaches his defense for a year in the NBA, and then gets a mid-major head coaching job.
It's very interesting to me that Mike Rhodes, you said, is a legitimate candidate. I mean, he's really only had the 1 year at Virginia Commonwealth where they made the tournament, right? I mean, I
can't speak to how much how much Michigan wants him, but I can speak to the fact that I've been told that Mike Rhodes is trying to get his name in the mix.
Yes, he's been at Virginia for only 2 years. So, talk about a program that's constantly losing coaches. I mean, VCU, because Will Wade was there. I mean, it's just a constant a revolving door. post Shaka, and I mean even Shaka wasn't there, for that long. But it's just incredible that I guess it's a testament to a VCU's program, but I'm sure that the fan base is getting increasingly tired of losing their coach and having to restart. Because VCU should have a very good team next year. I think currently Marcus Evans is coming back, right? I mean he's someone who could have grad transferred hypothetically, but they have so much coming back. I think they only really lose Sean Mobley, who is their starting four-man. They're a top 25 team. They're the favorites in the A10. So that would really be a blow to the A10 to lose Mike Rhodes.
I mean, realistically, I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying this is what is kind of being looked at in terms of on Mike Rhodes' side trying to get in the mix. I will say it is an interesting time for Michigan to flip, and I was tweeting about this with a few different people, in that there's no clear name that is at a stepping stone job. So, for instance, someone said, oh, well, they'll get a great name because Ohio State got a great name with Holtman. Well, it was a very logical time where Chris Holtman could leave Butler. He was doing great. He was ready for the next step. He's getting a job that fits him regionally, that fits, that's the right level. That's the, it was a perfect fit at the time. And right now in the Big East, there isn't really that name regionally because Wojo, I guess you could argue, is that name. I don't love that fit. And it's not exactly a, Wojo's a Midwest guy. He's a Duke guy who happens to be in the Midwest. Same thing with Chris Collins at Northwestern. Ed Cooley doesn't fit regionally, but as a smart guy, I think it makes sense. You got Porter Mosier, but he had the one NCAA tournament run, otherwise hasn't done a ton. You'd think they could do better. Mike Bray's probably too good a job, at least like in theory. He could certainly take it, but it's not a slam dunk. Dayton is not in a position to pump a coach into Michigan. So there's just not that clear stepping stone coach right now. Like Chris Mack would have been that guy last year, but now obviously he's at Louisville. So where do you go if you're Michigan? I think it becomes very interesting in terms of the clear paths not necessarily being there. I think they'll get a good name because I think it's a very desirable job, especially in today's age of college football programs getting good college basketball coaches. But it will be very interesting because there's no clear name, I think, to watch.
Yeah, because all these Big East teams, you have Wojo, who built a really, really good team that just kind of imploded, right, with the Hausers leaving, and it took him a while to build these teams up. He had some really good players like a Henry Ellenson who was only there for 1 year. They just I think 5 years, only 2 trips to the NCAA tournament with 0 wins. He has the kind of the brand name himself, being that a Duke guy. Then you have Cooley, who's 1-5 in the tournament, but he recruits at a high enough level at Providence that I think, as long as you're getting to the NCAA tournament and you're getting a good seed, you're going to break through. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be able to break through at Michigan. But that 1-5 record, it is a real black mark on a resume. And then similar with Kevin Willard, he's 1-4. I guess you could go Greg McDermott, but that's supposedly he was offered the Ohio State job last year. I guess you could go Greg McDermott. That seems like it would be kind of an uninspiring hire too. I think Mike Bray. I think it would make a lot of sense for Mike Bray. They obviously had a down year this year, and they're young enough where the talent is there, and they could, maybe even break into the top 25 or at least be close this year. But certainly no sure thing, and he certainly has enough on his resume to warrant a slightly upgrade. It's pretty much lateral, but it would be a slight upgrade, and it'd be a fresh start.
Right. That's the question, is how much does he want a fresh start? Because, it checks all the boxes for a Michigan head coach in Mike Bray. I think the question would be, why would he want to leave Notre Dame? He's got a good young core. He's in a place where he's very comfortable. I can understand UCLA. I want to go to California. I want to be in a truly elite program. I don't think the step up is there enough where it's super logical for Mike Bray, but I could certainly see him taking it. Who else do you like there?
Well, how about Kelvin Sampson? I mean, he obviously had a lot of success in the conference. He's doing well at at Houston. I don't know if the NCAA issues at Indiana would kind of discourage them from taking him. But it is also funny because in his new contract, at least from what was said, he worked into it that his son would be the coach in waiting. So it would be very funny for him to negotiate this into his contract and then leave a month later, and then they would be forced to make his son the head coach.
That would be pretty funny. I don't think it's happening personally. There's just kind of no juice there. Like no one's talking about it. I mean, he'd fit. He's recruiting in Houston a lot, though. I mean, he's not out here recruiting up north. He's an older guy. I don't have a huge issue with it if that's the direction you want to go, but I'm also not. I'm also not necessarily a huge fan. I really think Billy Donovan is the name you shoot for. Kind of realistically, think that makes a ton of sense. I know there's Brad Stevens is a guy you could call. I can't see that. There's a few other names that Jeff Goodman threw out on his search firm. He threw out Mike White from Florida. I don't know why he'd leave Florida for Michigan, but I guess he could. LaVall Jordan hasn't really done it at Butler yet enough to prove it to me, and didn't exactly kill it at Milwaukee. Bobby Hurley, kind of a big name. Ed Cooley, Porter Mosier, Juwan Howard, and obviously Thad Matta, which I don't think will happen. Chris Collins, I don't understand it personally. I think that Chris Collins is a decent coach. He's a very good recruiter. I know there's been some frustration about academics and getting kids into school. That said, I don't know why he'd be the name for Michigan, given what has happened in the last 2 years, coming in 10th and 14th respectively in the Big Ten. I mean, the NCAA tournament is still a great achievement, but at this point, I don't really understand why Chris Collins would be seen as so desirable. I mean, if it was even last year, I'd get it. But I think after this year, it's spoiled enough for me. I think others would disagree, but in my mind, the jury's again out on Chris Collins.
I think the interesting thing about LaVall Jordan, I mean, hiring him would kind of be similar to hiring like a Kevin Stallings at Pitt, where maybe he's a good coach, but you're hiring him to a better program while his program is currently on a downward trajectory, right? Because LaVall Jordan is a former Michigan assistant, but Butler is, I think, undeniably on a downward slope than when they had Chris Holtmann after this past season and how the roster looks moving forward. So to kind of hire him with that negative momentum, I think that that would be a not a wise choice there.
Well, the thing with LaVall Jordan is, we don't know how good he would have done. He would have been at Milwaukee. He had one bad year, gets a better job as a result of it, just because of basically timing, and he was a Butler guy, so he gets the job late in the cycle. He wins 1 year, and I think probably the level he was expected to win with Holtmann's players, and then as Holtmann's players start to phase out, he goes under 500 this year, and it's not like he's reeling in top 50 recruits. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I'm not saying he's going to get fired at Butler, but I don't exactly think that LaVall Jordan deserves the upgrade. And if he does, I mean, it's certainly he certainly would have a very fortuitous, coaching career so far in terms of getting jobs that have he may not necessarily have earned with his record.
Absolutely. And then one guy who I haven't really seen mentioned would be Scott Drew. So he's kind of a Midwest guy. I mean, he coached at Valpo, which is certainly in the Midwest. Overcame a lot of adversity at Baylor. Really built that program up. He's recruited at a high level. He's done it with transfers, done it with traditional recruits. I thought that they certainly overachieved this year despite losing Tristan Clark early in the season. So on paper, at least, I think Scott Drew would be a fit, and Michigan is certainly a step up from Baylor.
Yeah, I think it could work regionally. It's one of those where like Scott Drew's name doesn't get mentioned for any jobs, and the question is why. And like I'm not plugged in down there enough to know, but it is interesting that his name isn't coming up, and there has to be a reason.
Per Wikipedia, he makes $2.8 million a year.
I mean, Greg Marshall's name gets thrown around at every job, even though he makes 4.
That's right.
Greg Marshall at Michigan, by the way, I know some people will toss it around. I don't get it personally. I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's necessarily elite, and I think with the money that you'd have to pay to get him, and with the I don't think he's the Michigan man. I think he's a Southern gentleman who'd work at Alabama or Arkansas before he worked at Michigan.
And then just kind of one last guy that I've seen mentioned will be Mark Schmidt. I think that's just too big of a jump. I think Schmidt would be great if like a coach goes to Michigan from another high major school, and then he could kind of grab that job. Like if Cooley left, he could take Providence, or if yeah, even if like Kevin Willard left or something, he could take Seton Hall. But then I'm sure the media will be up in arms if he got the job over Tim Cluess.
Of course, because Tim Cluess is John Wooden. We all know this.
Yeah, so that would be something to keep an eye. I don't think that's quite reasonable, to go from St. Bonaventure, where he's done an excellent job, with a lot of challenges there. But at the end of the day, he's barely making the tournament as an at-large. He's finding 3 or 4 diamonds in the rough, which is good. But when you need to recruit at a higher level, can you do that? Those are the main questions.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect him to be in the mix if one of the Big East jobs were to open up. I think he wants to be at a basketball school. He wants to be at a private school. I don't think the idea of working in Michigan necessarily appeals to him. Combine that with obviously the fact that it is a really big step up, as you said. I don't think it's a realistic option. So we'll see there. Gun to your head, Brad. Who do you think gets this job?
Gun to my head, who gets the job? I mean, this is a really tough one to pick. I think I'm going to go. I'll go Billy Donovan.
That's where I was going to go as well.
Because, I mean, in the NBA, you get fired for much less. I mean, he's been there for, what, 5 or 6 years?
Right. They want him to leave, but they're not going to, may not fire him. It makes so much sense. And it's probably a spot where he's going to inherit a roster of players that he's not going to hate. The players aren't going to all leave because he's a big name who they watch coach in the NBA. Right? Like, I think it makes so much sense. I mean, I had always said Billy Donovan for Duke when Duke opened because I thought the timing would be right there. But I think Billy Donovan it would be my choice and the favorite in this one if he wants it. Obviously, he has to want to come back to college. I know Jeff Borzella was saying that he thought that Billy did want to come back, but I mean, if it's a college guy, I'm thinking it's Mike Bray or Porter or into that second tier of Porter Moser or Mike Rhodes.
And I think those would be good hires. Interesting though, because I think a lot of people kind of planted their flag that Porter Moser wouldn't have been a good hire for St. John's, and then for him to get Michigan, we'll see if they need to do a little tap dancing in their quest to protect Tim Cluess and kind of pump him up. Let's see if they feel the same way if Porter Moser were to get a better job.
I mean, they would just say regionally. They'd be like, "Oh, we like Porter Moser as a coach. We just didn't get the regional fit." That would be the
which I mean, it's 2019. Come on.
Which is I would agree.
You can watch every AU game on a stream on the website.
Oh, huge! It's so huge. I was gonna go to Indianapolis, had things come up, so I spent half my weekend just watching Twitch streams of AAU games. It was great.
So just one last thing I want to mention before we get into transfer talk. So the Pan Am games, right, which is going to be the Big East All-Star team. 5 of the teams are going on overseas trips, so presumably they're not going to be sending their players. So the Big East is only going to be able to pull from Butler, Villanova, Providence, St. John's, and Georgetown.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw that before.
I did not. I was hoping to Paul because I wanted to see Paul Reed, but realistically, I mean, then you're talking about what, a roster of like Akinjo, Butler guy, Jordan Tucker, AJ Reeves, what was it, Seton Hall?
No, Freddie. So it's so here was my projected starting lineup would be Akinjo, Baldwin, Mustafa Heron, Alpha Diallo, Nate Watson. And then I have a bench of Colin Gillespie, AJ Reeves, Brian Antoine, Josh LeBlanc, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Sadiq Bey, and Jermaine Samuels.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good to me. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
A lot of Nova on that team, but
yeah, I mean, it has to be though.
Yeah, because then the guys who would have just missed would have been Jordan Tucker, Sean McDermott, Cosby Roundtree, David Duke, Luane Pipkins, and Mac McClung. So I think you get like the versatility with Samuels and Bay. They could play some small ball five. As long as freshmen can be on the team, then Antoine and Robinson Earl will certainly be on. And then if international guys can't be, then obviously no Yurt 7. But if they could, he would certainly start at center.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that Yurt 7 wouldn't be wearing the U.S. flag, but I mean, he'd be the best player, playing up front at least. So that'll be fun. Any basketball we can watch over the summer, Brad, we'll take it. We got TBT coming. We got Peach Jam. We also got to watch all these international trips. We got to overreact to them. Or maybe not overreact, because if I recall last year, you found like a stream of one of the George Mason games and watched it. Like, I don't think they look very good, and then we didn't trust our gut.
Well, they were horrible, but I guess like the floor was slippery or something. So it was like, they had to deal with this like obscure kind of condition, and they weren't that bad. I guess you kind of rationalize it, but in hindsight, they were very bad. But then the year before, Purdue was playing in the World University games, and they looked very flawed, and they ended up being quite good. So
Matt Painter, don't bet against Matt Painter. Yeah. Anyway, we got to move on. We got to talk a lot about transfers, a lot about recruiting today, because there's been a lot of action. We didn't get to touch on it last week. I think the biggest thing, and we'll spend a fair amount of this transfer segment talking about, is Memphis. Because they're just a major storyline in college basketball right now. Today, picking up the commitment of Boogie Ellis, the former Duke commit, a top 40 recruit, could play point guard, could play off the ball, could really score the basketball. It was always a rumored landing spot as soon as he decommitted from Duke, but still a massive get. He joins Rayjon Tucker, who committed over the weekend to Memphis. He's a 6'5" wing who averaged over 20 points, 7 rebounds, shot 50% from the field, 40% from three. One of the best, if not the best, grad transfer on the market. A very athletic wing, and come throw in Lester Quinones, a top 50 recruit shooter, 6'6" wing for good measure. So very good week for Penny Hardaway and company. How good can this group be?
I mean, if they get Precious Achiuwa, I think that they're a lock for the top 5. I mean, the one thing working against them was youth. Then they get a senior grad transfer. I mean, they're still going to be super young. And it's funny because I see tons of people mentioning like, oh, does Memphis have 40 scholarships? Like, how are they getting all these guys? Well, they had like 6 or 7 seniors, and they ran everyone else off, right? Except for 2 or 3 guys. So that's how you can change over your roster like this. But this is just an insane amount of 4 and 5 star talent. Yeah, I think if this roster had the name Kentucky, I think people would have them certainly in the top 3. And now we don't know if Penny is as good of a coach, but I mean, with this much talent, it's almost impossible to leave Memphis out of a top 5 or top 10.
Right. I mean, let's just say they get Achiuwa for the purposes of this podcast. We were talking about it before the show, before we got on. you're talking Boogie Ellis at point guard, Ray John Tucker at the 2, Lester Quinones at the 3. I guess it would be Quinones at the 2, Tucker at the 3. 4-man Achua, 5-man Wiseman, DJ Jeffries, your first big off the bench, Tyler Harris, your first guard off the bench. You'd also have
Alex Lomax.
You have Lomax. You have Damian Ball. You'd have Malcolm Dandridge up front. You'd have You'd have Isaiah Maurice up front. You'd have Lance Thomas up front. You'd have depth up front. You'd have depth on. You really only place you don't have depth is the wing. But even then, you have like a lot of guards who can handle the ball. So, I mean, the roster would be constructed nicely. I think the concern you have with that roster is A, general inexperience, B, lack of experience in coaching and Penny, and C, Boogie Ellis being more of a scoring point guard than a get everybody else involved type guy. But, I mean, the roster is really, really good, especially if Achua pops. The one kind of side note in all of this is it means RJ Hampton is almost assuredly going to Kansas, which helps college basketball because now Kansas will potentially have Devon Dotson, RJ Hampton sharing the backcourt, which would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's good for college basketball to kind of spread the wealth on these recruits. And by spreading the wealth, I mean Memphis getting them all, right? As long as it's not Duke and Kentucky, it kind of creates another super team, if you will. Memphis isn't going to dominate like the platoon Kentucky team and stuff, but it at least gives you another another storyline and another talking point in college basketball, and a team that certainly has the talent to compete for a title. It'll be interesting to see all these new pieces coming together. I know Oregon 2 seasons ago they had a lot of older talent, but they couldn't gel. And they mixed in like freshmen like Troy Brown and Kenny Wooten with like older guys like Mikhail McIntosh and Elijah Brown and Peyton Pritchard, and that team kind of fell apart. This is a lot of youth. We'll see if we'll see how good of a coaching job Calipari really does year in year out. Kind of massaging the egos and putting together these elite rosters.
I will say the good thing is I don't think this team has too much talent. Right? I think there's been Kentucky teams, there's been Duke teams where just sharing the wealth was a concern, and I don't think that will be a problem. I mean, James Wiseman is going to have expectation of shots. I think Boogie Ellis will have expectation of having the ball, but I don't think Quinones will be a problem. I don't think Ray John Tucker will be a problem. I don't think that DJ Jeffries, top 50-ish recruit, will be a problem. I think they'll be able to mesh a little bit more, just on the virtue of they're not so overly talented. I mean, Achua thrown into the mix does add another mouth to feed, but I think it's doable. I really do. And yeah, I mean, Penny will be tested, and Penny will be criticized like crazy if this thing doesn't work as well as it should. And if they're just like a fringe top 25 team, which I don't think is outside the range of outcomes for a team of that talent level, he'll get roasted because, he can't coach. Look at the talent he has. But it's all a young team. I mean, I think it'll be very interesting. I love all the Twitter takes every time Memphis lands a recruit now. Oh, Memphis has got to be paying players. Where's this money coming from? I don't think Penny's any dirtier than anyone else.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point where they have a lot of talent, but it's pretty tiered. And guys at the highest tier, like a James Wiseman, and then probably Ray John Tucker also on that highest tier. They're going to get the most opportunities, and maybe like a DJ Jeffries sees a smaller role than anticipated if they get Chua. But overall, I think the rosters come together pretty nicely. In terms of moving on to some other transfers, I think the next big one that we haven't talked about yet, I guess, Admin Gilder. If we talked about this transfer last week, we would mention how Gilder's going to play next to Norvell, and it's going to be a kind of an odd backcourt, but they were both good enough where that would certainly suffice. Both guys can really score. Norvell has announced he's definitely leaving, which means Gonzaga's back in the hunt for another point guard. They have Derek Thornton visiting, but Kevin, I think Gilder is certainly a step down from Zach Norvell, right?
Yeah, I don't think he has quite the same shot making creativity and diversity. Um, in terms of just playing off the ball, I know there was talk that Norvell was going to play point guard. I don't think Gilder's the guy you want to do that with. I think you're better off playing a true point guard like a Brock Rivette or potential reclassification with Dominic Harris. We'll see what happens there, but yeah, I think Norvell is clearly the better player. I think Gilder as a replacement for Norvell though is about as solid as it comes. You get a guy who can catch and shoot three. He's efficient. He can rebound. He can handle the basketball. Ideally a secondary ball handling role, but he's very solid. He's a solid playmaker. He's got good size. He's experienced. It's about as good a grad transfer out if you're Gonzaga as you could have made. I think Derek Thornton is interesting. I think Derek Thornton is probably best suited to go to the Boston College St. John's where the expectations are low and he can just ball out. I don't think Gonzaga or Texas Tech are the right fit, but it will be interesting to see what he wants to do.
Yeah, in terms of Gonzaga, I mean, for me, point guard is still a enormous hole on this team, and I don't think that they're rankable until they get an upgraded point guard. Because I mean, I think Gilder's definitely a step down from Norvell. I mean, Kispert is he was a nice fifth wheel on the Gonzaga lineup that had four awesome players. I'm not sure if he's has the diverse offensive game needed to be the second option. I mean, Petrusev, he was good in a limited minutes. I mean, I'm sure he'll take a step forward, but they have so many guys who are like five men, and like Anton Watson's going to play a big role at the 3 and the 4, but this is a young roster without a point guard. So I think until we have more clarity on who that point guard is going to be, I still don't think that you can rank Gonzaga.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I mean, I think the one guy to watch in terms of their backcourt is Martynas Arlauskis. He's the Lithuanian kid who's coming in. They call him a wing, but I've been told he can handle the ball as well. So I guess you could do like a backcourt where it's like Arlauskis with Gilder. It's still kind of figuring it out. I think a graduated point guard would be ideal, but I mean, I think given that Arlauskis could handle the ball, I guess you could kind of do it. Ideally, we'd try to find some stats on Arlauskis to comment on. I'm looking for them now.
I think it's the elephant in the room is will it matter, right? Like will Gonzaga just be so much better than 80% of the WCC that even though they're not as good, will they still just win and kind of mask their deficiencies and they end up in the top 25? Then it was a moot point anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will win. I guess the question is more so, what's their ceiling nationally?
Because I see that this team is certainly worse than the Gonzaga team that was an 11 seed that had Sabonis, it had Wilcher, and I think that was Perkins' redshirt freshman of the season. I mean,
I think the
Wilcher
and the whole is better.
The roster talent as a whole, you said?
Yes.
But they don't have the two NBA players.
I'll buy that, yeah.
I mean, sometimes bigs can have a steeper learning curve. But guys like Drew Timme and Anton Watson, I mean, they're seen as impact guys immediately. I think how much will your opinion on Gonzaga change if Tilly leaves?
Not a ton.
Yeah,
how much would your opinion change if they got Derek Thornton?
A lot, because I think that Thornton, even though he's a flawed player, just the upgrade over this kind of murky point guard situation, I think that's enough of a benefit to kind of move Gonzaga solidly into the top 25.
I guess the question is, how good do you think he is, given the fact that he's bad at Duke, he was not good at USC, and I tweeted, it's kind of a big loss. I still think he was the best point guard at USC. I have USC fans saying, oh no, it was Weaver was going to start anyway. And obviously that could be revisionist history, but I think it's a very. I think I don't want to overrate Derek Thornton. Is my point.
I think he'd put up like 11-5.
You think he's better? He's better there than at USC.
Yeah, I mean he would play 30 minutes a game. The competition is lower. The league isn't as athletic, and he would be one of the top shot creators. I mean, USC had Benny Boatwright, right? They had Rakocevic. He wasn't a kind of a featured player, and then it's always different when you're competing for minutes as to when that the job's yours. So I think Gonzaga. I think 11-5 would be pretty reasonable.
I can buy that. We'll see what happens. I think Thornton, as I said, is better suited for one of those. Just give him the ball and let him roll. But we'll see. I think they'll be fine in terms of what WCC. The question, as you said, is nationally and how they'll look. So, any objections to moving on to some more transfers?
Nope. Where do you want to go next?
Let's go TJ Holyfield because it's fairly recent and fairly important. The big man out of Stephen F. Austin decides to go to Texas Tech over Kansas. Of course, there was lots of discussion of Illinois given his ties to Brad Underwood. There's lots of Kansas fans angry that people were saying that Kansas got beat out because apparently Kansas had backed off. But I mean, regardless of whether they backed off or not, I think it's a very logical ad for Texas Tech. They were thin up front. I think he profiles really well as a potential small ball five. He can step out and hit a shot from threes at 41% in 2017-18. He's a good rebounder. He's an excellent defender. He can block shots. He's agile. He'll play the 4 or the 5. I think this fit makes tons of sense. And even if he's a guy who scores 5 points a game, he could be very valuable for this team.
Agreed. And I thought Illinois made perfect sense until I realized that Kipper Nichols is back for next year. These mid-year transfers, I just can't figure out their eligibility. So I thought he was gone. He's back. So then I think Texas Tech probably made the most sense. Kansas gets Tristan Enuora, who's a 4-man. But you mentioned he could play the 4 and the 5. I guess the lineup's going to shake out probably Moretti, Ramsey, Edwards, Holyfield, and Thomas. You have Corprew in there too. And Kevin McCullough and Terrence Shannon off the bench. I mean, that's a solid team. I think it's certainly top 25.
I argue top 15 with Beard's defense.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we had touched on this a few times earlier, but this is going to be a different team. This team is going to be a lot more athletic, a lot more versatile. Whereas last year, they would use a too big lineup occasionally with Owens and Odiase. I think that this team's they don't have the number one option like a Jared Culver like they did last year, but I think they have a lot of really interesting support pieces that fit together nicely. I would expect Moretti and Edwards to both take a nice scoring jump.
Yeah, I would buy that as well. Moving along to Akwazi Yeboah. This is a little earlier. We're just skipping around here for the last 2 weeks. Goes to Rutgers. I think this one really makes sense because he's another guy who allows them to play small. Now they can play a lineup with Omari at the 5, Yeboah at the 4, maybe Harper at the 3, or you play 3 guards with like Mathis, Mulcahy, and Geo Baker. You got Jacob Young in there next year. I guess the question for me is there enough overall talent to be a tournament team? I think they have the coaching. I think they have the experience. They might have the star player in Geo Baker and Eugene Omari. They might have the star power, especially if Mathis were to take a step forward. Do they have enough overall talent? I think they might. It's really tough though.
I think they do too. With any team like this that returns a lot of guys, you're going to need someone to kind of emerge. And Baker could do it. Mathis could do it. I think the lineup that you mentioned with Amarui and Yeboah as the bigs, I think it's an interesting lineup. I never really thought of that lineup. Because whenever I've seen them, Miles Johnson's played pretty well. But that gives them another look. I think Rutgers with Peichel's defensive reputation and how Rutgers has defended the past few years, they've got a little more offense in there, a little more shooting. I think this is the year for Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean, the question becomes is when do you do it if you're not going to do it this year? Because you got Yeboah and you'll have Yeboah and Omari graduating. I guess you can add more guys for 20, but I mean, at some point you got to do it. I think they at least have to make the NIT. I mean, that's the bare minimum. You got to win like 18, 19 games to make the NIT. If you're Rutgers this year, I think that's a reasonable expectation, though.
Yeah, and then if Issa Chiam is off the team, he's still on their roster by verbal commits. But if he's definitely off, they have one spot left. I would go after a sit out 4-man, because you mentioned Amrui and Yeboah both gone. So then next year their lineup could be, the guards would be all set, right? You have Baker, Mulcahy, Young, McDonald, Mathis, Harper, and then you still have Miles Johnson as a big man. You just have that hole at that kind of combo forward spot. And speaking of that hole at the combo forward spot, I thought Yeboah made the most sense at Marquette. I thought he'd probably start there. But the Stony Brook Steve Pyle connection, and he will play a pretty significant role, probably off the bench, but a pretty significant role nonetheless.
Speaking of fitting at Marquette, one that didn't, Jace Johnson off the board. This one made no sense, Brad. I mean, absolutely no sense. We talked about it a little bit. I mean, they already have Theo John, who's clearly better in my mind than Jace Johnson. So at best, you're either playing two bigs, which is ugly, or you're playing, Jace Johnson 15 minutes a night, Theo John 25, and destroying Ed Morrow's minutes. Like, why? I guess you could run off Ed Morrow now, and then Ed Morrow could go to like a Northwestern that needs a big. But like, it makes no sense. Like when he's got Nebraska that's got 1 million minutes to play and just got a 17-year-old kid from France to play all 40 minutes at the 5.
It makes me think, is Jace Johnson like an elite screener? Because they might just be like, we're running Marcus Howard off millions of screens. We'll play John and Johnson together and just have them just screen Marcus Howard open.
I mean, it'd be fun. You just have a 7-foot man running around at all times, chasing Marcus Howard, trying to make
screen assists.
He's open. I mean, if Wojo really thinks he can play those two together, especially in the Big East that plays a bunch of Alpha Diallos before, like, oh man, he's got another thing coming.
Unless they're gonna like zone and like pack it in, but I mean, even
do that.
Even
Their
so,
reputation has been offense for 5 years. And all of a sudden, they're just going to be a defensive-minded team for a year by playing like two big, Sakar Annam and Brennan Bailey with Marcus Howard. And Marcus Howard's going to like shoot 90 shots a game. It's a terrible strategy.
Yeah, the fit on this team is weird. I still think that they're probably a tournament team. I would expect Morrow to make a move, you'd think. I mean, between Northwestern, Nebraska. I mean, I have a huge list on my phone of teams that really need it big. I mean, even like Valpo, they have a pretty good 1 through 4 now that Javon Freeman's back. But like LSU needs a big. Texas Tech doesn't anymore, but Clemson needs a big. Nevada, Western Kentucky if Bassie leaves, Utah State if Cada leaves, Boise State, could be pretty good if they get a strong center in there. Ole Miss got their guy. Arkansas needs a big. So, I mean, there are plenty of places where he would add a lot more value than wasting away on Marquette's bench.
When you said Ole Miss got a big, let's talk about him. Kadeem Sy, former Virginia Tech guy, was down to Pitt, ECU, and Ole Miss chooses the Rebels. I mean, it made sense. There was the recruiting fit with ECU given the ties to Virginia Tech staff and Steve Rockefort. There's all the discussion of Pittsburgh, who could have also used a big to play probably 20 minutes a game and next to Terrell, or not next to, behind or ahead of Terrell Brown. He wanted to choose to Ole Miss, but desperately needed a big. That was their gaping hole. He'll play 30 minutes a night, be very productive. Had a great year in JUCO. Wasn't great at Virginia Tech. He was like fine. He was like a rotation big guy who didn't do a ton, protected the rim a little bit, played down low. But a really solid get for Kermit Davis, who needed one.
He was like on Virginia, then he went to JUCO, then he came back, and then he left again. But I mean, this is such a huge pickup because Ole Miss's other 3 big men were all freshmen, and they were all sub 100 centers. Rodney Howard, I think, was top 150, but you want a little more experience. with Ole Miss's roster, that could easily be a tournament team. You have Brian Tyree and Devontae Shuler in the backcourt, and then probably slide Buffin up to that 3 spot, and then you have him and Hinson. They have some solid freshmen off the bench. Now Rodney Howard can kind of ease in and play a smaller role. I think Ole Miss should probably be as good as they were this year. 8 or 9 seed.
Yeah, I mean, losing Terrence Davis hurts, but I think they'll be in good shape. So yeah, very nice get. Kadeem Sai off the board there. Let's talk Nebraska real quick. They add the big kid from France. I'm not going to pronounce his name because I'm going to get it wrong, but he's 17. He was considering TCU, Georgia Tech, and Nebraska. They also add Shamil Stevenson, and on the way out are Brady Hyman and Amir Harris, as well as Carrington Davis, I believe. So that roster is a complete gut job. Fred Hoiberg was out here running off Brady Hyman an hour before his last final. Pretty brutal, but that's college basketball, I suppose. Add Shamil Stevenson, he can play the 4. Add this French kid, he can play the 5. I think it makes sense. I think it's a logical cool thing. I've never been the hugest Stevenson guy, especially at the high major level, just because he averaged 8 points a game on that Pittsburgh team that was brutal, and then this year barely played, transfers, and it's still a bad high major team. And now he's expected to be like a starting 4-man for Nebraska.
So they have Matej Kavas, the face-up guy, the spot shooter. This Nebraska team, it's a lot of like pretty good players. They don't have enough high-end talent. It's just a lot of guys that are like, oh yeah, he's pretty good.
It's a lot of I take that guy, but it's not like I need that guy.
Yeah, it's like a lineup potentially of like Cam Mack, Hanif Cheatham, Dutchin Burke, Kavas, and then even if Roby was back, I mean that lineup isn't even a bubble team. That just screams NIT to me.
Yeah, that's very NIT, and that's like if a lot of things go right, where like Isaiah Roby's back. I guess the idea would be like Isaiah Roby turns into Niang, and then Cam Mack is like an elite assist to turnover ratio like Monty Morris, and you have Iowa State 2.0. I don't know. Like I love the Shamil Stevenson as Georges Niang. Yeah, the dude didn't play at Pittsburgh.
They have a lot of really good 5th best players.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is something that plagued Providence this year. They had one Alpha Diallo who was awesome, and then they had a bunch of guys where it's like, yeah, he's good, but he's not doing enough for his role.
I guess the other question with Nebraska in terms of general roster construction is, and I find this stuff fascinating, is they had so much work to do in this cycle just to field a team that's competitive next year. And you get, 3-year JUCO Cam Mack, 2-year JUCO Gervais Green, some grad transfers, multi-year guy in Shamil Stevenson, multi-year guy in this French kid. And the question is, you're adding enough to be relevant this year, but is that the top end talent that's necessary? You almost are better off just going the sit out route. I guess they added Banton. I don't know how much he's a top end talent though, like a fringe top 100 recruit out of high school. He didn't do anything at his first stop. I mean, the challenge is, the overall accumulation of talent. And I guess the idea is you could always get these sit-out guys later in the process or like next year when they have some scholarships. But the team building is an interesting thing.
Yeah, this was certainly a quick flip. And even Banton is a really good 5th best player, right? He's your Sean Livingston, your Andre Iguodala. Like you put him around these stars and he starts to look really good. But if he's the starting point guard on a team that needs him to create a lot of offense, he's a really good passer. He was really good early in the season for Western Kentucky when Bearden was out, and he was making plays for Bassie and for Hollingsworth and stuff. But those teams are going to be much more talented than Nebraska. And I mean, Nebraska, they're going to have guys coming back, and then they can add more grad transfers and potentially make a really nice team. But right now, certainly looks like they still have a lot of work to do.
Right, and I guess the other thing is like, so for me, one of the things that I talked about with Arkansas was, are they going to have enough talent overall? Like, okay, I like Isaiah Joe, I like Mason Jones, but is Mike Anderson going to have enough talent in the SEC, given what the rest of the league is doing? And like when you have Northwestern getting a top 100 kid or two every year, the talent level is pretty high. You have to go get players, and we'll see if they can do that. So I think, like you said, it's an interesting start. How can they build it long term, though? I think I'll be watching very closely over the next couple of years.
All right, I think the next guy that we have to touch on definitely is Justin Pierce, combo forward from William Mary, going to UNC, where he should probably be the starting power forward. I mean, pretty clearly just looking at the roster. He's someone who can create for himself, create for others. He's a really interesting player who should fit really nicely in this front court.
I do not think he's a 4 at this level. He's very skinny. He put up the rebounding numbers, but I mean that was in part being at a school where playing 4 out 1 in. He's playing like a small ball 4. I think North Carolina's gonna play 2 bigs. Pierce could slide in the 3 next to Keeling. He can shoot the ball. He can create. He's very smart. I think running the fast break will be beneficial with him. I would guess it's Cole Anthony, Keeling, Justin Pierce, and then your 2 bigs, probably Baycott and Sterling Manley
or Brooks.
Yeah, probably Brooks. Actually, yeah, you're right. So
I mean, you're saying Justin Pierce is skinny. I mean, Brandon Robinson is one of the skinniest guys out there, and then Black is certainly pretty skinny as well. So if Pierce doesn't play the 4, it's got to be 2 bigs, which I think that this UNC team could have a higher ceiling. Playing Pierce at the 4 than like a Brooks, Manley, and a Baycott. Going 2 of those at a time.
Hey, North Carolina had a top 5 offense when they played 2 bigs a couple years ago. So I mean, it's very tough for me because I am like you are, very much when you can go small, you do it. Like always space it out, play 4 guards, etc. But I think given Roy's history, we can expect he's willing to play 2 bigs. 2 bigs isn't destroying your offense if you run good stuff and you have a good point guard, and they do. And then now you have backcourt depth because you can play those 3, and then you have Anthony Harris off the bench as your first guard, or maybe Robinson, play tech. So you have at least like 6 guards you're comfortable playing. I guess Leaky Black is, if you count him as a guard, I don't know what you're going to count him as. I guess he has to be a guard. But he can play the 3 instead of Pierce, potentially, be the starting 3, and then Pierce be the first guy off the bench. I just don't see Pierce being a 4.
But I mean, a counterpoint to the whole two big thing is that when they had that elite offense playing 2 bigs, I mean, Isaiah Hicks was one of the best players in the country, playing that power forward spot as the second big. Brooks nowhere near a offensive impact player, certainly not to the level of Isaiah Hicks.
Yeah,
I mean, Hicks was a 3-point shooter. He could hit like a mid range, but Brooks is in there to set screens and play defense. And I think if you go hit him and Baycott, I mean, I'm someone who doesn't think that you have to pace and play Warrior style, play Rocket style. That you can still win by playing 2 bigs. But I would even be kind of hesitant with this bigs Brooks and Manley / Baycott permanent solution front court.
That's fair. I'll buy that. What other transfers do we have to get to?
You want to touch on Olenicek for Ole Miss to Florida State?
Yeah, this was very whatever. Like he was a very whatever player at Ole Miss. Now he's gonna go to a better program with less minutes to offer.
Well, so Florida State, does their thing with the 7-footers. They've done this dating back to Boris Barjanovsky and Ian Gibson. I mean, they've done this for years with tens of big men that they get like 3 7-footers in there, and they play them all like 10 to 15 minutes, even if one is superior to the other. And I think Olenicek, as a senior, I think he's the clear starter at center. Balsa Kaprivitsa's eligibility could be in question with the whole wiretap thing, but even if not, they're both going to play. Kaprivitsa probably has the higher ceiling, but Olenicek, I'm sure will start and play like 18 to 20 minutes and be like a whatever Florida State 7-2 guy.
And they already have McLeod and Kaprivitsa, both 7 foot or taller. McLeod is 7'3", so they've got plenty of size. They also have Raekwon Gray, who I guess you could play as a 5-man. I know he's not your typical 7-footer, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. I guess there is more minutes than I had initially anticipated. I assume there was another big man in the pipeline. They weren't quite as ready as I expected, but I guess it makes sense. He can play a little bit.
That's because Kevin Gelly left early and
Right, yeah, that was the one I'm missing.
Probably unexpected.
Is he gone? Is he done?
Yeah, he's gone.
What else we got on? Randomly, Daniel Giddens to Vermont. That was one of those like a bunch of people on Twitter were very surprised that like a player of Daniel Giddens' recruiting status would go to Vermont as a grad transfer. I freaking love it.
Me too. It was so random, but it just fits.
Right. He's an athletic big man. He's like 6'11". He'll probably average like 10 and 8 in the America East. And he gives you a guy who you can play against real bigs in like a 4-13 game and not be overwhelmed. I mean, Daniel Giddens, he's not a star. We know this to be true. We know that against high major talent, he will look very average, if not below average. But at least you have the size now instead of trotting out. I mean, Samuel Dingba, who's a 6'9" transfer from Quinnipiac, averaged 5 points a game in the MAC.
Well, because before they had, was his name Peyton Henson, the Tulane transfer
guy. He was a stretch big.
Yeah, he was pretty big and he was very good. But he didn't have like the size or the athleticism that Giddens has.
They also had Drew Urquhart. He was like another big. He was like a true big man that they'd play because they played a lot that one year with like Henson, Urquhart, and Lamb together, and Lamb was playing like a 3, which I guess he'll start to transition to more this year as his NBA stock tries to, be reliant on that. But it'll be very interesting. I mean, Vermont has a chance to be very good because they're going to bring everybody back except for Ernie Duncan, who is like the shooter. You could handle the ball a little bit, but they'll still have Steph Smith, still have Lamb, who's one of the best mid-range players in the country. To add Giddens, I mean, that is awesome. I mean, good for John Becker for making that happen.
While we're on this kind of mid-major kick here, Malik Ellison joins Tracy Carter for Hartford. Same conference, the America East. 2 guys, former high major starters, albeit on bad teams. I mean, Tracy Carter was a starter on the Marquette NIT team that we mentioned earlier with Henry Ellenson. And then Ellison started on a St. John's team that was not very good. And I don't even know if he started for Pitt this year. But that's 2 pretty interesting guys going to Hartford. I still think that they're worse than Vermont, and I haven't really looked at Stony Brook's roster yet, but they're in the mix year in, year out. But it's certainly an interesting addition nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, Albany should be in there. UMBC should be in there. UMBC got LJ Owens, which I really liked out of William and Mary. I liked both the guards leaving William and Mary. Chase Audich, who went to Northwestern, and Owens. So that's a good step for them. I'm worried this Hartford team is going to become our darling, Brad. And they're going to be like Denver with Torrey Miller-Stewart and Ronnie Harrell. It didn't work out. But there's 2 talented guys. I mean, it's very smart for John Gallagher because they had like a semi-disappointing season this year where like they brought everybody back for like an 18-win team. We're projected near the top of the league. They go 18. They basically flatline. They go 18-15 again. Go 10-6 in the league. And they're gonna lose like 5. They're like top 7 scorers were seniors. So you just bring in Tracy Carter and Malik Ellison, I believe, were high school teammates. I read those guys can just ball out. They go like mid-pack in the conference, and you buy time to build your next recruiting class, and hopefully don't have that like 4-28 year.
Yeah,
coach.
Next, a guy that I've seen a lot of positive press for, Justice Suing, going from Cal to Ohio State. I was surprised that he went to Ohio State, given their kind of depth on this wing 3-4 area. I mean, they have a lot of options. Maybe even we'll see some super small lineups similar to what Ohio State did for stretches last year, where they had Keita Bates-Diop and Jay-Sean Tate and Andre Weston all playing together. Because now on the wing /4, they'll have Justice Suing, EJ Liddell, Alonzo Gaffney, Musa Jallo, and then a guy like Luther Muhammad, who could play a kind of smaller wing spot when they have two guards in there. So Chris Holtman has built quite a team with a lot of versatility.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Justice Suing. Very athletic. Um, if he adds a 3-point shot that's more consistent, shooting 30% this year, I mean he could be excellent. In the excuse me, in the Big Ten. I think it's one of those things where I had touched on the one or two podcasts ago how the Pac-12 is a very interesting spot for transfers because you get a guy coming down from a big school that you wouldn't get otherwise into the Mountain West. Where like in the Big Ten, if a Justice Suing level player leaves, he's obviously staying in the region at another high major. So like, oh, he goes to Kansas State. Oh, he goes to he goes to Marquette from a Big Ten school. Oh, he goes to Creighton or Xavier, but there's no like there aren't those like programs out west. It's the Pac-12 or anything. So if you're leaving the Pac-12, you got to go to the Mountain West or the West Coast Conference. So like a San Diego State can capitalize and could not quite capitalize with Justice Suing, unfortunately.
All right, let's knock out two at once here. Baylor's got two sit-out guys. Adam Flagler, who was a freshman at Presbyterian. A lot of people thought he would follow his coach to Appalachian State. He goes to Baylor, where he will sit one, play three, essentially be the replacement for Devontae Bandu. When I think Bandu graduated, I think he was a 2-year JUCO, now a 3-year JUCO. But he will step into the rotation and compete for a starting spot next year. They also get Jonathan Chambua Chachu from UNLV, one of the 10 centers that UNLV had. He somehow raised his stock among the million big men, and he is off to Baylor, where he'll probably be behind both Tristan Clark and Flo Tamba after. Also as a sit one, play three.
Yeah, I didn't watch very much UNLV this year, so like all the big men who had very strange names kind of blended together. There was like Chachua, there was DeYoung. They had all these like really tall dudes who were not very skilled. So I'm gonna loop him in with that group. I just didn't watch a lot of UNLV, so I don't remember. I like Flagler a lot though. I mean, he was one of those guys where he's a transcendent type recruit for a program. Presbyterian had never finished over 500 in a season. He comes in, he wins them 20 games with Dustin Kearns. He averages 16 points, 4 rebounds. He could really shoot the ball. He was that transcendent guy. And so they would have kept him, I think, if Kearns stays. Then Kearns leaves. Kearns tries to keep him, bring him along to Appalachian State. Just couldn't do it. So very nice get for Baylor, who does a really nice job on the transfer market. Davian Mitchell coming in this year, along with Maceo Teague from UNC Asheville. So right in the Big South once again. I think Scott Drew's done very well there.
Another twofer that we could talk about here. Boise State gets Marcus Shaver, the scoring guard from Portland, and Mladen Armis, the center from East Tennessee. Both sit out guys. I think they're both sit one, play two. But kind of in general, what do you think about this Boise State roster? For next year and then the year after. I mean, Derek Olson. I've seen a lot of positives about Derek Olson. Justinian Jessup, took a pretty big step where he's a really strong Mountain West player. And then you have two guys who should be eligible mid-year unless they get waivers, and Abu Kijab and Emmanuel Akot. So Leon Rice has really injected some talent into the program. Where do you see Boise State's kind of ceiling, or like their season ending up?
I think the ceiling this year, just because you're gonna have the mid-year guys, is probably like top 100 KenPom team. But I mean, if they brought everybody back into the following year, they could be really, really good. Where you could have like Akot, Kijab, Shaver. They also have this year coming in Bryce Peters
From Colorado.
Colorado was going to go to UC Santa Barbara, then went to another year at JUCO. That's an interesting name. I thought was worth mentioning. But I like Armis a lot. They had both ETSU had him and Jerome Rodriguez. Jerome Rodriguez was going to go pro. He's coming back for a 5th year. So that's very big for ETSU. But Armis is just one of those tough-minded rebounders up front. You very big kid, can scrap down low. Kind of a weird transfer, but A nice coup for Boise State. I mean, Mountain West has a chance to be really good going forward because in Nevada with Alford, he's doing his thing. You got Desmond Cambridge from Brown. I think they'll do well. New Mexico's got all the talent in the world under Weir. San Diego State's building lots of talent. I mean, this year in particular with Flynn and KJ Fegan and Yanni Wetzel and Matt Mitchell. So that thing's rolling strong. Utah State's got a great coach established. I think even kind of the next tier with like UNLV could get back into the mix. I like Justin Hudson at Fresno. I like Nico Medved. I mean, this league could be really good again. And we said this last year and it didn't really pan out, but I really do feel good about the future of this conference.
If Armis gets a waiver, which I don't know if he has any claim, but I think center is really the missing piece for Boise. If he can be their upgraded center, I mean, they could be in the mix for a bit. I mean, it's just such a like a super thin margin for error. With these Mountain West at large teams or even lower conferences where you really can't afford slip ups. So Boise State should be in the mix if they can get waivers for these guys, but if not, next year certainly looks promising. There's next guy I want to touch on, TCU, Edric Dennis. I thought this was kind of a surprising move because I just don't have a great feel for this TCU roster. Kind of, I guess it's going to be like Kendrick Davis, Edric Dennis, Desmond Bain, Lat Mayen, and Kevin Samuel. I mean, this isn't a tournament team, right?
I don't like it at all. I mean, Edric Dennis helps. I don't know really what his role is because he's undersized guard, not point guard. He can't really shoot. He's a good rebounder. Like he's tough. It was a weird team that all around the UT Arlington team that he was on. They were supposed to be terrible, and then he helped them be like at least solid. But this is a guy who shot 35% from the field this year and shot 36% from the field at Jackson State in 2017. So, I mean, how much can he really be expected to bring to TCU?
Yeah, I mean, they have a bunch of guys sitting out, like Jadion Ledee, Kevin Easley, and Keontae Kennedy, but they're not, they're not like super impact guys, right? I mean, Ledee could be like a nice starter. Easley could be, a really good player, right? But we were talking about this with Nebraska earlier. It's just the overall talent level isn't there for me.
Yeah, I'll buy that as well. Another random transfer that I really liked, KJ Lawson going to Tulane. I love this because the dude is going to put up like 20 and 10 and like be an all conference player. They're still going to be bad, but they added him. They added Christian Thompson today from Rhode Island. He's like a big physical guard. They got Tayshaun Hightower who's going to have to sit. They have Jordan Walker from Seton Hall, so he should be good. So I guess the lineup would look something like it'd be like Jordan Walker. I know there was talk that Caleb Daniels, who's in the portal, could come back. So could you do like a Jordan Walker, Caleb Daniels, Christian Thompson, KJ Lawson, Samir Sahich lineup? And then
they also have Rayona Embo, right?
Correct.
Missed this year.
Correct.
I saw Draft Twitter talking about him before this season. With him back, I mean, with him and Walker in the backcourt, then you have like Thompson coming off the bench. You also have Kevin Zhang, who was a pretty highly rated recruit, who started for them as a freshman. They have Lawson Cih. They're building, not building something, but they're not gonna go 0-18, right? I mean, they're
building something that won't suck.
Yeah,
right. They could go like 6-12, and then they should build a statue for Ron Hunter.
Yeah. Which, I mean, he's really good at getting like second chance kids from Georgia and stuff. I mean, if he can continue, to get guys from Georgia, maybe a higher level of recruit or like a higher level of transfer than he was getting at Georgia State. I mean, why can't you build it at Tulane? It's a very good academic school. I'm sure it has great resources. Who knows if they pour that into basketball or not. But I think a lot of these kind of designations, like, oh, that's a bad program. You can't win there. That's dead. And I think that's with the right coach, I think that could be overcome easier than people think.
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, I think he can do a good job. I think there are inherent challenges. Like, I don't know that you could take a million JUCOs at Tulane because of academics. The facilities are a little aging. People don't care about, Tulane basketball in New Orleans. There's a million other things to do. But, I mean, there's no reason why you can't get guys on the downswing and guys who were like problem. Like, you couldn't get like the Tevin Max of the world, right? Like a problem with Texas who like wants to go play at a high level. Still, I guess you go to Bama, but like the idea, you get the idea of that type. Like a kicked out of school, and like it's tough to build with that. But like, I think there's a moment. I think there's something you can do there to get talent. The problem is it's just a weird league because it's a high major, and it's like if Memphis is going to recruit like that, and Cincinnati's going to be good, and UConn's going to be good. What's the ceiling? I think that's the real question with that job is like, how do you get it rocking like those schools? And like, I guess the answer is you aren't, but I mean, that's very demoralizing. But the best thing we can be is fifth in our conference.
Yep. So I don't know how many more guys you want to touch on. I think there's definitely 2 or 3 more that we should.
All right. Why don't you just choose which ones? Because I have lost the list.
Okay.
Fine, we're good.
Start with DJ Harvey, double-figure scorer at Notre Dame. He's off to Vanderbilt. His final 2 is Vanderbilt and Iowa. I was surprised he didn't go to Iowa. I thought that he really fit with their roster, especially with Isaiah Moss leaving. Even if Moss was still there, I mean, their final year, or Moss's final year wouldn't overlap with Harvey's time, and he'd give him like a big physical wing to go with kind of their more skilled big men like a Garza and a Nunji. But he goes to Vanderbilt where he's part of this rebuild. I don't know if guys like Penny Hardaway are making expectations too high, but guys like Mike Young and Stackhouse, they got to get moving, right? I mean, it's so tough to rebuild, especially when you have jobs like Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech that are some of the worst jobs in their league. I mean, you got to get moving, and they haven't really made the impact additions. Like Harvey's a nice addition. I don't even know who they could add, but you really have to start being mentioned with like the elite or at least top 100 2020 guys immediately.
Challenge is like not everyone can be Memphis and build momentum like that. I mean, it's tough. It takes time. Vanderbilt is kind of a weird job. I guess Bryce Drew did it. I mean, got those guys buzzing pretty early, but I mean, I think this first class will say a lot. You got Jordan Wright, you got Kenyon Martin Jr., Scottie Pippen Jr., Dylan Dessou. Those are all like decent recruits. None of them are that high level. If 1 or 2 of those guys hit, and then you have DJ Harvey, Saban Lee will be a junior. You have Moyer still a piece, and then you can start adding to that with 2020 guys. You can start adding to that with another transfer. Then you might have something. But in my mind, it's like you still have to be patient. Like Vanderbilt giving Bryce Drew for 3 years is ridiculous. It's just not that good a job. And like Jerry Stackhouse is obviously going to have more time than 3 years to build this thing, because I don't think I think year 3 is not like the goal is like, oh, let's make the NCAA tournament in year 3, but that doesn't mean in year 3 you got to fire him if he doesn't.
Yeah, and then Drew didn't leave Stackhouse with a whole lot. I mean, people love Aaron Nesmith, people love Saban Lee, but the rest of the roster is really lacking. And I mean, even if Bryce Drew stayed, I mean, maybe he expected Simi Shitu to stay. I mean, that's not anywhere close to a tournament team. So Stackhouse certainly has a lot of rebuilding to do. Just 2 more guys that I want to mention. Maybe I'll even push to 3. But Nyjir Brooks going from Cincinnati to Miami, and I mean, just what a blow for Cincinnati. Not even that Brooks is that good of a player, but you had this really nice veteran-laden roster. You're a point guard away from being an elite team in college basketball. Your coach leaves, you lose Brooks, you might lose Cumberland. Logan Johnson, who was a nice piece, leaves. Fredericks was a rotation guy, he leaves, and they just took a major step back. And then in terms of Miami, I guess Deng Gok is probably the starting center this year. Maybe they go small with Keystone at the 5 and Wardenberg at the 4. but then Brooks for his final year would step in, give them a physical presence in the middle. A program that's looking a lot better. I was worried about Miami. I saw that pegged that they were going to be bad this year. I mean, they just had no depth and kind of lacked that top end talent. But I think that there are programs in a really good spot.
Yeah, I like Brooks. I thought that was a really nice ad. I mean, he was an 8-6 guy. Gets a year to work on his game. I think it'll be a really nice piece for them. Note on Cumberland, played at the G League camp today. Had a plus 11, which led the team and led all players in the game. But like the numbers were not good. He put up 2 points in 20 minutes, 1 of 4 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 turnovers. So he didn't really pop in that setting. Did not see any buzz about Jaron Cumberland as a result of that game. So we shall see whether he is back or not. I mean, the coaching change makes things difficult. I saw Tony Paul, who works for Detroit News, tweeted that Javen Cumberland likely lands with Jaron if Jaron stays at Cincinnati. And if not, Michigan was seen as the likely landing spot, but that was before the Beilein change, so he wasn't sure what would happen there.
Can Javen play point?
Not really. I mean, he's like a 2 guard that you could like pigeonhole there.
So they would still need to find a 1, especially because Logan Johnson left and he wasn't a 1 either. But then you'd have probably the Cumberlands on the wing, slide Williams to the 4 and Scott to the 5, play small.
Yeah, probably.
Then just 2 more guys I want to touch on. John Laurent from UMass to Oklahoma State. Yeah, he'll play some 4. You'll probably come off the bench, right? You probably start McGriff at the 4 and Yornay at the 5, but then he can, you split those 2 spots 3 ways, right? So McGriff would be the backup 5 and Laurent play the 4, play Laurent and a 9 together. I think that this is an interesting fit. Certainly an upgrade from what they had. I think Oklahoma State should be in the mix for a bid. They're going to need some of these freshmen to step forward. They have a pretty solid class with 4 top 150 guys, 5 guys in total.
My thing with Laurent is like A, he's never won, and B, like he's one of those guys who in theory everyone could use. Like he's a combo forward, he's athletic, he can shoot a 3, he can like defend multiple positions, he can rebound. Like the floor is very low, but I mean, just given the reputation, like he didn't build a very good reputation at UMass, from what I've been told. So I don't know how much he helps. We'll see. I think it could work, but I don't think it's like a game changer by any means.
I mean, the transfer game in the most part is just upgrades. Like you're not gonna build Rome in a day. It's a piece in the right direction. And then just lastly, I want to touch on Javon Freeman. Going back to Valpo, Valpo has a really strong 1 through 4, right? They have Aaron Gordon, the Seton Hall transfer, will probably play the 1. Then you have Freeman, Fazekas, who's a shooter, and then you have Nick Robinson, the St. Joe's transfer. The 5 is where it kind of comes undone. They have a few European guys in the mix there. I mean, if they could get an Ed Morrow or like another big man on the market. I know Morrow's not officially on the market, but I think he'd be a pretty good fit there. Or if they can, somehow find a rim protector. I mean, that would be very hard to find at this stage. But, they could be an interesting team in a valley, which is, starting to build a few different teams in between Missouri State, Loyola. That could have some pretty interesting rosters.
Right. I mean, they were so screwed, and then all of a sudden Javon's back. I mean, Javon is Valley Player of the Year talent. He is very good. He's very athletic. He can score the basketball. He can handle the ball. I think between him and Gordon, you got somebody really cooking up in the backcourt, especially throwing Zion Morgan. I mean, he wasn't great in JUCO, but he was like a former UNLV guy. He's kind of a stuff the stat sheet guy. Can pass, can rebound, so you can do it everything as like the first guard off the bench. Even if you just played like Malik McMillan, or you got Soroya back. I know there was rumors that Soroya could come back. These are just like kind of just minutes fillers at the 5, and the depth still isn't great. But I mean, you still got something there with that top 4. It does kind of make me question, going out and filling your entire class with these international guys because you open up a bunch of spots. I'd rather just take a couple sit out transfers. I guess the whole game changes without Javon. if Javon's not there, you're talking about a roster of like Aaron Gordon, Nick Robinson, Fazekas, no point guard, no real top tier talent, no big, and you just say, okay, let's take some raffle tickets on international kids and hope it works out because I'm, Matt Loddick and I might be in trouble if we struggle. But with Javon back, it obviously changes the game.
I mean, we can keep going if you want. There are a few guys left on the board,
One
but
guy I wanted to touch on that you didn't hit on was Donnell Gresham. It was a while back, but we touched on him potentially at Georgia a few weeks ago. It winds up happening. I liked this get. I think it's very logical. You're talking about Gresham as a guy who can handle the ball. He's not a great penetrator, but good defensively, can shoot the three. With Anthony Edwards there, I mean, it's very logical. I mean, Georgia is the sleeper for Achua, right?
yeah, I think he really only makes sense there. Well, I mean, he's good enough where he would make sense there regardless. But if Claxton left, I think he'd make more sense.
Yeah. They still got Rayshawn Hammonds regardless. I mean, they're in good shape.
Yeah, I mean, probably starting lineup, you think Gresham, Edwards, Harris, Hammonds, Claxton.
Yeah.
And then your bench has 3 top 100 freshmen and then 2 former top 100 freshmen, one of which in Tyree Crump averaged double figures this year.
They could be in good shape. I think they're in a solid spot.
The Severe Wheeler grab was huge. I mean, playing the backup point guard as a freshman, then we'll step in when Gresham and Edwards leave after this year. They're in good shape for the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Green is doing a really nice job. Really, really nice job. So I think that wraps up the show. We could talk about transfers all day, Brad. We got a million of them. We'll have more. So tune in next week. We'll have more transfers. We'll probably have a little more clarity on the combine process. I'd imagine we'll get some names coming back to school now after the week that was, and maybe we'll have a Michigan coach. So appreciate you all listening and have a great night.